Hi, good morning. May I please get a grande cup of
So, like I was saying, thank you for being with us today. Today, I will be speaking with Cody Two Bears. Cody is the founder and executive director of Indigenized Energy, a new company looking to bring energy sovereignty to tribes across the region. Cody, thank you so much for being with us today. We really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me there, Garin, and super excited for this conversation as we talk about energy and why it's really important to not just Native tribes in this country, but really Indigenous people all over the world. So excited for this conversation.
Excellent. So I obviously just gave a very brief background, but if you wouldn't mind taking a few minutes to introduce yourself, talk about your background, growing up in Cannibal, being near the Dakota Access Pipeline protests, we'd love to hear more.
Yeah, well, thanks for that, Garin. So my name is Cody Two Bears. I'm the enrolled member of the Standing Rock Sioux tribe. I was born and raised there. Nobody knows where Standing Rock is located. It's in the northern part of South Dakota, the southern part of North Dakota, and I think it borders two states really. So it's kind of confusing. I know some tribes in the country they do border multiple states. We're one of them there, but Standing Rock is the fifth largest landmass tribe in the country. So about 2.3 million acres of land out there. So a lot of land where I come from, but I live in the most northernest tip on the North Dakota side. That's where I grew up in Cannonball on the North Dakota. So just to kind of give you the dynamics of where I come from, I grew up in one of the lowest status communities in the state of North Dakota, but really didn't really understand what that really meant. I just thought things were really normal from places where I came from. Just growing up with family, grew up in a home of a three-bedroom house with 17 people. So really understood the dynamics of family and how close families need to be to continue to work together and move together in a positive way. But I think what kind of really got me jolted in indigenized energy was just kind of really understanding how energy really affected Native tribes and Native people and indigenous cultures all over the world. The extraction of what it does to Native cultures is pretty significant. And the more I learned about energy, the more I realized that we use it more every single day. But most importantly, how we're so reliant upon outside resources to provide us that energy. So it really propelled me to create Indigenized Energy. I was the youngest elected leader in my tribe's history for the tribal council there. I led my people from 2013 to 2017 in that community of Cannonball. And that's kind of when all the protests and things start coming to my homelands, the Dakota Access Pipeline. They were proposing this largest pipeline in United States history, just a half mile north of my community there. And just understanding and knowing the catastrophic effects of what extraction does to not just our ways of life, but our sacred sites, our animals, our waterways, just everything in general really affects who we are as Indigenous people that we don't agree with. So it really kind of propelled me to educate myself even more around energy initiatives, why they're important, but also to really do it in a way that really respects who we are as Indigenous and Native people throughout this country, and really propelled me to kind of set this vision and this plan moving forward to making sure that we do things that the way we see fit in our Native communities and do it in a respectful way that can really honor our future generations as we continue to move forward in this way. So
That's excellent. Thank you so much for that. So you talked obviously sort of about your history, leading towards this creation. Was there any singular impetus that led you towards the creation of indigenized energy, or was it just hoping to operationalize this necessity that you saw not only within your own community but across the region?
yeah, I really look at our Native values as Native people and Indigenous people, and one of the things that I would say is because of those factors of native values really made me understand the effects of how can we connect who we are as native people to Western science or Western technology, the good technologies of today, right? And really propel them in a positive light, which really kind of made me understand my language. As I say, how madakyapi. How madakyapi in my language means all my relations. And when we talk about all my relations, we're all connected, we're all related. And it's that in my culture, we say nachi, that nachi. It means that spirit, right? Because a lot of people that don't understand native values or who we are, sometimes you're like, well, why do you always protest, or why do you always want to fight against something, or things that affect the land, the water, the animals, the resources, the air? Why do you do that? But as I say that word, how madakiapi, all my relations, and talk about that nachi, that spirit is what connects us all. And what I mean by that is like the water that flows, that has a spirit. The grass that grows, that has a spirit. So those are all that. It's not just like my mom, my dad, my uncle, my grandma that we talk about, right? That what I mean by we're all related, we're all connected. It's those spirits that connect us all through the whole world, through the universe. And as we kind of understand that as Native people, and why we say those spirits connect us all, really makes a whole different perspective of environment when we talk about environmentalism, environmental work, energy extraction, different things like that. Because what we're trying to do is protect our relatives out there. How Madakiapi, we're all related, and we want to make sure we look after one another. And our native cultures and native values kind of led me to creating Indigenized Energy, because as we continue to really extract in the world and where we live in, we have to understand now, and more importance of how can we respect it now moving forward. Because indigenous cultures around the world, native tribes in this country have been affected by energy extraction for so many generations. The word climate change, and I think now climate has now started to affect the rest of the world, and they're starting to be affected more and more every single day. Now they're starting to ask a lot of questions about, well, why is this happening around me? How come I'm being affected now all of a sudden? So now a whole awareness has been created around why the world is acting the way it's acting right now, and why things are happening the way they are. It really just all involves around making sure now we really, really move cautiously to making sure that we protect the environment in a very respectable way moving forward. And that was one of the main reasons why I created Indigenized Energy, was because just to making sure that we start to really look at these things and bring in the good technologies and the good sciences, and collaborating them with indigenous cultures, our traditional customs, and who we are as a people, and to really move forward for our next 7 generations in a good way. Because it's really important to pay attention now on what we're doing and how can we make things better as we move forward.
Excellent. So maybe you can talk us through some of the projects that you've worked on through Indigenized Energy. The last time we spoke, you told me about the first solar farm that you were able to create, the small one right outside Cannibal. How did that come to be? How did that process go?
Yeah, I think, like I said, I'm fairly new into the energy game. I've been only doing this now for about 8, going into 9 years, really educating myself around what it really means. I think what really propelled me to really focus more on energy is because I never thought things like energy extraction would come to my backyard. I always hear it in the news, or hear it happening all over the world, and places just being affected, and oil spills into their water and their land, just can't live no more because of the conditions that extraction has done around us. And never really understood what that really looked like until about 10 years ago, when I started to do more research in a lot of my work around energy. So when I was on tribal leadership, I brought a utility bill to my community. I'm like, I kind of held it up, and I'm like, does anybody even know what any of this stuff means, right? Like all these crazy numbers, but nobody really understood what that was. All they seen was the bottom number of what they owed. They didn't really know what those numbers meant, how much they're actually being charged. So I did more research on my end, and come to find out the homelands where I come from on Standing Rock, which is kind of mind-boggling, right? You go 7 miles off, same utility, same co-op, 7 miles off. They were paying half than what we were paying on the reservation. And nobody really knew that until I started to expose and create awareness around that. And then as the more research I did through other reservations around the country, it started to always, like, that was the commonality. It seemed like the low income status communities in our places in the country are paying more than our regular constituents in other areas. And I was saying, why is that? Why is that happening that way? But not only that, is to really just educate ourselves around the unique opportunity to create something better. And what I mean by that is far too often, us as Indigenous and Native people, we've always been fighting against something, whether it was stopping pipelines or protecting our lands and creating awareness and trying to let people know who we were as a people. But I think over time we started to forget that, it's good to fight against something, but what are we really doing to fight for something? And I think that was a whole big part of why Indigenized Energy was created as well. So that really propelled me to really learn more about how can I bring energy infrastructure, good positive energy projects that are healthy, that are clean to the air, better for the environment, to our people and where we live and where I come from, right? So that really propelled me to create the largest solar farm in the state of North Dakota, which, by the way, is really hard to do. North Dakota is the second leading fossil fuel state behind Texas. So their policies are really driven in that way to make my projects that I'm trying to do here even more so difficult. But it took me a couple of years to develop that, to understand that, and do it in a way of just really asking questions. I think if there's anything that I would share with the audience today is don't be afraid to ask questions. And if you don't know something, find somebody that does. And that's what I did. I created that largest solar farm right there, 3 miles away from the pipeline crossing, Dakota Access Pipeline, right there in the lowest income status community in the state of North Dakota. And I told myself, if I can do it there, we can do it anywhere, which really my work back then was just focused just on Standing Rock. But now Indigenized Energy has really flourished to support a lot of tribes throughout the country, which we're really excited about and really scaling up for. And I have a lot of big things coming because of what I created there in my community of understanding what energy could do in communities like mine and the impacts it can create.
Yeah, the ability to flourish is certainly a way to say it. If anyone here isn't aware, Cody and Indigenized Energy were part of a group that was awarded an EPA Solar for All grant earlier earlier in 2024, which is one of the Biden-Harris administration's big policy implementation tools to have solar spread throughout the country. So maybe you can talk us through the process of recognizing that opportunity. Those grant applications are also a heavy lift. And then obviously how you're sort of envisioning scaling Indigenized Energy up, what you see for the future.
Yeah, I think in history's past, if you look at other parts of the country, solar is a little bit more friendly. You go to places like California, you go to Arizona, even the red state of Texas is flourishing in solar energy, right? So it makes sense anywhere, regardless of what side of the aisle you sit on. It makes sense, and we'll probably get to that question later on as we go down, this conversation. But when we're places where I come from in the Northern Plains, we really, really struggled to capture a lot of those opportunities. Statistically, you look at states that like North Dakota, South Dakota, even Montana, places in Wyoming, we're dead last when it comes to really solar energy or any renewable energy in general, right? So that's where I think Indigenized Energy was really more focused on in the very beginning. We still are focused on the Northern Plains because it is some of the most difficult places to deploy this work anywhere else in the country. But what's so unique about this grant is that this grant was a $7 billion no match grant that states, municipalities, nonprofits, tribes can all put in for. We were one of 4 recipients through the tribes to get awarded this. We were awarded the most amount for the tribes compared to everybody else of the 60 awardees that did get this money. So we're really appreciative to lead the way in Indian country with a lot of the money that we received with this grant. But what's so significant and impactful about what I'm telling you is out of all 50 states that Solar for All, no match, $7 billion, it's just free money sitting there. There was 6 states that didn't apply for it, right? Six states. And out of those 6 states, we service 4 of them, which is pretty ironic, right? So the cool part of that is now that we got awarded this money, we have an opportunity to actually lead the way in these parts of the country, doing it with native tribes and doing it in a way of showing really positive examples of how well this could work in places of the Northern Plains. So not only are we excited to receive the money, but we're also excited to lead the way in this part of the country and one of the most difficult places in the country to do it, to actually show progress, show success, and really excited about our efforts. And to kind of cap it off, we were the first. Indigenized Energy was the first to break ground through Solar for All a month ago. We did our first project in Chippewa Cree Tribe in Montana, And 3 weeks ago in Ogallala Sioux Tribe in South Dakota, out of all the 60 awardees, the $7 billion that were awarded through all the states and everywhere around the country, our Native people were the first ones to kick that off here at Indigenized Energy. So we're really progressive in our work and what we do, but we're also very excited about the direction of what this is going to bring. When we talk about $136 million, that's a lot of money into places that really need it the most. So my vision around that is to try to inject that money into these communities as much as possible, but all really understanding the capacity within these communities needs to grow. When we talk about workforce, we talk about making sure that there's enough education and training there, making sure that there's a lot of technical assistance that's provided through this whole process and project management skills. So, and working with a lot of the tribal colleges, different things like that, because we just don't work Indigenized Energy. We're not project based. We're really programmatic based. So we want to make sure that we create a sustainable plan in what we do with every tribal community, because it's really important to make sure that we're not just building projects and leaving these communities with a very hardship when we leave, because we're looking at over 200 homes from every tribe that's going to get awarded, a lot of solar, battery, and really energy infrastructure that can really save a lot of money, but impact a lot of lives as we do it. So I just wanted to kind of throw that out there to you, that it's my goal to inject this money as much as possible internally within these tribes, but also understanding that externally, there's going to be some external partnerships that we have to create to support this work as we move forward. But very excited about this work and it's a 5-year grant. So we're really excited about the next 5 years and what we're going to be able to do in the Northern Plains with a lot of this funding.
Congratulations on breaking ground. That is fantastic. And I don't know if you can see some of the other screens from people, but there's a lot of excitement coming from people here, snaps and claps, everything like that. So sort of following up on that topic, breaking ground on the Solar for All, the work you've been pursuing. In our last conversation and on your website, through a lot of the interviews and media you've done, you highlight this concept of energy sovereignty. That's sort of the way we framed this discussion even. So I was hoping you could sort of share what that means, how you see that, envisioned that as a sort of a guiding principle for the work you're doing.
Yeah, I think energy sovereignty can be interpreted in a lot of different ways. One thing I would share with you is, because I'm enrolled at a federally recognized tribe, had a chance to visit a lot of different tribes through my work, and even previously to this work, got to understand a lot of different cultures and relationships with other tribal people around the country. And out of the 574 federally recognized tribes, every tribe is uniquely different. And it's really important to make sure that everybody understands that there's some uniqueness or some differences there that every tribe is going to have. So there's no really a cookie cutter way about going about anything, whether it's energy sovereignty or whether it's food sovereignty, whatever it may be, culture, language, everything's going to be a little bit different there when we talk about Indigenous communities in this country and even around the world. So I just wanted to make sure that I referenced that, right after the very beginning. But, energy sovereignty, if you think about it, over 200 years ago, we never think about energy the way we think about it now, right? We always thought about, as Native people, the most important thing to us was our ways of life, our culture, our language, our traditional medicines, food sovereignty, just understanding, kinship and who we are and where we come from. And just really understanding the land and the resources around us and how can we utilize that to create a really good way of living for Indigenous people. But I think energy is fairly new now to a lot of tribes. We use it more and more every day. We're really reliant upon it. Places of where we service in the Northern Plains, now we're starting to embrace on winter now. The 4th season of winter is coming. It's getting very cold. The winds are picking up. And it's really important that we keep our homes warm in the winter. In the history's past, we've a lot of our Indigenous people on some of these remote, desolate reservations, like there's homes just out in the middle of nowhere, trying to live in these types of conditions, whether they're in the cold or if you go down south and in the summertime. I think down in south, they've been breaking records this past year of how hot it's been getting down there. So not having adequate energy to even cool your home or to even warm your home could be very catastrophic for people that need it the most. And people actually, have died in their homes because of those types of things. in places where we come from. So it's really important to start to focus on energy sovereignty as we move forward. And I think one example that I can give you is whenever all the energy infrastructure in Texas broke down a couple years ago, it was other places through the country that had to subsidize that energy to provide to them, right? So like even up here in North Dakota, we had to shut down our energy, I think like 3 or 4 days in a row for like 2 hours out of the day to supplement that energy to send down to Texas. Well, that wasn't like something like saying, well, if we have to shut off our own electricity, that's not even by our choice. So by creating energy sovereignty is a choice. It's a self-determined way of saying, like food sovereignty, traditional medicines, everything else, we need to be able to understand what energy sovereignty looks like now, because that's another pillar that we add on to really be self-sustainable on homelands and where we come from. And I think, you know, Native tribes have a unique opportunity to show the rest of the country and the world how to do that. You know, even though we can do it within a Native tribe, why can't we do that within a county or a small community, right? Like, and say, hey, we don't need external resources. We can provide that internally within our own now and provide our own resources. So that's something that we're continuing to build when we talk about energy sovereignty, and that way of making sure that we don't have to rely on outside resources. But another thing that I really kind of laser in on energy sovereignty, what really means a lot to me is because I've grown up in a community that's been oppressed for so many generations. You know, broken treaties, broken promises, oppressed, not a lot of opportunity, not a lot of jobs. So I really grew up in one of those communities to understand what that looks like. Indigenized Energy is not a Native-led organization that's outside looking in. We're from the inside looking out, and you know, wanting to build bridges and partnerships that can support our work that really align within our Native values and what we're doing moving forward. But I think the most important thing that I've seen in my work and why energy sovereignty is important to me is because it creates a healing aspect of what we're doing. Every project that I've been a part of up to this point, we build up what we call these solar warriors, get local people to build them on the ground, educate them, make them understand it, create that own internal investment within them to wanting to build more and do more in their community, but also bring energy education to it. Resiliency within these homes, home efficiency, just everything in general to make them understand how important energy is. And while we go through that process, we're bringing opportunity and hope to these communities that really don't see it very often. And when we bring that opportunity and hope and actually create successful projects in our communities, that creates a lot of healing to where a lot of oppressed people really need it the most. And that allows our Indigenous and Native people to even want to do more and be better within their home lives, their communities, their families, and just their tribe in general, which really excites a lot of people. So I see this work of bring energy sovereignty into communities that really need it the most to provide these services and create impacts, but it also creates a lot of healing in these communities that is needed the most as well. That's really, really important with our mission and vision and what we do at Indigenized Energy. So
That's great. Have you seen sort of envision energy sovereignty and specifically green energy sovereignty being implemented? Examples, or is this more of a you see this goal and you're sort of running towards it?
Yeah, I think we have actually made huge strides with several tribes now up to this point. In the Northern Plains, there's never ever been where tribes would come together for a common cause. I think we've seen that in the No DAPL movement, where in my community, there's about 350 plus tribal nations that has come there to share a common vision around protecting our water, land, and resources, and to stop fossil fuel development. But one thing that we haven't been doing is giving our communities the tools to combat that. Who's really giving them the tools to combat what they're protesting, right? Or what they're doing to make the world a better place. There's so much young people out there that really want to do something about it, but don't have the tools to do it, or education or training to do it, or don't have the money to go off to college or get the training they need, or bring the resources into their community. So Indigenized Energy is one of those outfits that we do our work free for tribes, 100%. We don't ever come into a tribe and ask them for money. We're based off of philanthropy, government, grants, individual donors, just anything in general that allows us to provide these services free to tribes. So totally understanding that dynamic and why it's really important to do this work It's just that as we go down this road of bringing energy to places that need it the most, we just want to make sure that we're providing them the right foot setting forward. And when we do that, we've seen one tribe, Menominee tribe, that's done work with us there in Wisconsin. They allowed us through some of their other funding resources. They trusted us to start to build out a program through their tribe, and then since then they've started to buy their own substations out, to start to build their own what you call tribal utility within their community, and we helped them pursue that. And now they're actually buying and selling energy through 20% of their reservation and looking to expand those services, right? So not only are we just providing education and training, we're also helping tribes become tribal utilities, where one day they can actually take ownership of their own infrastructure, buy and sell their own energy to their own membership, and then control those rates that they see fit for their people. So we've already had positive examples of doing that with a few tribes within our networks here in the Northern Plains that we're pretty excited about.
That's fantastic. So as you progress through the Solar for All grants and working with different tribal entities, this green energy transition often requires navigating these really complex, especially with energy, these complex technical systems, whether that's sitting or the interconnection queue. How do you navigate these issues specifically as you continue to scale?
Yeah, I think it is a challenge. Don't get me wrong. It's one thing to deploy renewable energy in a friendly state, and it's still complicated. But to do it in places of where we're doing it, like I said again, it's some of the most difficult places in America to do it. Right? I've really challenged myself to find the very best experts around the country to do that. And unfortunately, there's not a lot of natives that understand this work yet. So it's a twofold question for me. Is number one, there's some non-native people that I had to hire on my staff that are experts. Some of them that used to work with Tesla and Solar City, some of the bigger name companies out there that have such great experience of working throughout the country that are working with us, but also have some good Native American experts that also work with us. But it's really my goal is to make sure that as we go down this road of energy sovereignty and building capacity in these communities, that I want, after like 2 or 3 years from where we sit today, that we're going to generate more energy experts out there in native country to really do this work at a high level. And that's one of my visions to Indigenized Energy, as our internal capacity builds through Indigenized Energy and do this work externally. We're going to build a lot of those energy experts all over native country to do this work and do it at a high level. So that's really important to me, to do that work, but to totally understand the difficulties and the struggles behind it. There's still a lot of monopolies out there that really control the energy market, the rates. They make it very tough for it to pencil out financially. Right now, we just had an election that's going to be, we don't know what the landscape of green energy is going to be in the next 4 years. But what I can tell you is we always can pivot, shift, and navigate the best approaches on how we can continue this revolution of green energy within Native communities, because it's so important. Not once have I ever stepped in a Native community that they said, no, this doesn't make sense. This doesn't fall in line with who we are as a people. It seemed like Native people just understand green energy. Yeah, is it a fix all? There was a little extraction there. Yeah, of course it is, but not as much as what they're doing now through the current extraction of fossil fuels, and like that's catastrophic. We're doing it at a very minimal, respectable way. But as technology continues to improve and get better, I know over time we're gonna that footprint is gonna be less and less and less as we continue to move forward. But now is the time not to wait for that to happen. We need to start creating this energy infrastructure, energy sovereignty now as we progress towards that just transition for the future.
So you mentioned obviously the complications of the upcoming presidential turnover that could obviously complicate work in this field. How do you view these sort of political or bureaucratic hurdles? I mean, you obviously highlighted staying flexible, but I'm curious if you've ever run into these issues where either truly stumps you or sort of your approach in general.
I think because solar energy is becoming so much more cheaper than any other form of energy around the world. Like I live in a very red state, North Dakota. I don't know when the last time we've ever had a Democratic governor or anything like that, but they're really pro fossil fuel here. So it's really just about the approach, right? Like how come states like Texas can still flourish in solar but don't make it political, right? Like how do they flourish knowing that? But North Dakota, we're here sitting here very, very political, and kind of the region, North Dakota, South Dakota, Montana, very political. I just show them the economics. And when you actually show like ranchers and farmers in that area the economics of how they can save money, especially in days of inflation today, like inflation is continuously growing, things are getting more expensive, right? So one of the things that I would really say is that as you show them the economics, who doesn't want to save money around the country? And that's my always been my approach, is never to make it a political thing. Always make it a dynamic of how can we better our families and save more money on our tables to bring more resources into where we come from. And that's what solar energy does. It saves a lot of money for households that need it the most. Even farmers and ranchers in my area are so interested in it now. You know, I was kind of the lone ranger in this part of the country to do this work, you know, and try to educate people on how important it is. But I think we've been really moving a lot of mountains since then in this part of the region because of the examples that we were able to create. So understanding and knowing that we're learning that together, but it really allows just the general people to see how it really works, because there's so much propaganda that's been pushed out there at the political level to say, oh, this don't work. It don't work in cold weather. Oh, the snow. Oh, there's no sunlight. All these types of dynamic factors that are out there that are really based off of propaganda that really give green energy a bad light. But one thing I would tell you is I've seen a lot of success stories in green energy in places where we come from. Even Alaska, I mean, they're doing so well in Alaska through green energy right now. So, you know, if we can do it in some of these places, we can do it anywhere. But the most important thing that I would say through politics is that, you know, you say the word climate, or just anything like that, or global warming, or those keywords that you say to politicians, automatically they're going to shut you out, right? So you always just got to understand and learn who your audiences are, you know, and what they're about. And places where I've come from, it's very political when we say global warming or climate. So my focus in certain areas is really just based on economics and showing them what the numbers look like and how it really actually saves money. Money's within your homes that can really impact lives with solar energy.
So do you see this sort of indigenous green sovereignty push being able to influence larger green transitions across the country?
Yeah, I think so. I think the biggest thing that that I would say is we've been really stuck on awareness up to this point, right? I mean, there's nothing wrong with awareness. I think there's a lot of great organizations that create a lot of great awareness statistically, making us understand the landscape and all that's very much needed. So, but there's very few organizations that are actually doing something about it. You know, they're actually implementing the work, doing the work, building capacity, training these people, educating them, bring in examples to some of the most difficult places in the country to do it, and learn from that, learn together. And I think one thing that we're so successful on through Indigenized Energy is we were able to create the very first of its kind in the Northern Plains, a tribal coalition of tribes that actually has come together now to actually know that they don't have to go through it alone no more. We got all tribes in our area to be like, well, let's lean off of what's working for you, what's not working. Let's go down this road of learning this stuff together. And I think that's the beautiful part of what we've created here at Indigenized Energy is we're allowing a lot of tribes to work together, understand each other, and respect one another on how that should look like in their community, but also not to allow them to walk through this journey alone. And I think that's the most important thing on why, you know, I feel like the direction that we're going through green energy has been a successful one, is because far too often we've always seen all these opportunities come for Native people in this country, and they always leave us behind, right? So it was my goal this time in the last 2 years to say, you know what, there's no more, I'm not going to allow these opportunities slip for tribal nations no more. We have to try to hone in on that. We have to capture that. We have to work together to be able to provide those, those opportunities to our tribal communities. But most importantly, I think is just making sure that we're doing it together and not alone. And I think that's really the biggest example I can share with you on why I feel like this green energy transition is really going to be a good one for Native nations.
So that leads us into this really interesting idea, this there are some indigenous communities that derive a significant amount of revenue from oil and gas production. So have you encountered these kinds of tensions between communities regarding this shift to renewables, and how do you navigate those?
Yeah, I think we all know that the fossil fuel communities or even the fossil fuel tribes know that it's only temporary. It's not a long-term solution, right? It's a short-term solution. And one of our tribes of a part of our coalition is one of the biggest oil tribes in the country we work with. But to work with them, we're making them understand this transition from oil into green renewables. And actually they're really receptive to that. Right. So we're working with the fossil fuel tribe now that's really going to become an actual tribe that's going to be lead the way in this region through green energy.
Wow.
So, just making them understand the dynamics of, the health, the well-being, and just living in a good way, in a healthy way, but also understanding and knowing that, fossil fuels is a temporary thing. It's not really long-term and sustainable. So bringing these technologies and these things that can really be sustainable with a great plan could really uplift actual tribe to, like I said, not just be reliant upon fossil fuels, but to transition in a good way to other alternative energies that's really going to be productive for the future of their tribe. And I think tribes are really excited about that approach. They see all the opportunity there. And they know that it's just a temporary thing when you talk about fossil fuels. There's not a whole lot of fossil fuel tribes out there, but we do work with a few of them. And I know they're pretty excited about this transition as well, to moving away from that to really put better energies and healthier energies within their tribal communities moving forward.
So what strategies have you been implementing and utilizing to ensure that renewable energy projects remain this sort of inclusive and equitable force within these indigenous communities that you've been just working with?
Yeah, I think, like I said, the money is there, a lot of opportunity. We don't know where that's going to shift with this new administration. But, with the IRA that was put in place a couple of years ago, what's so exciting about that for Native people? And we always say, well, why is the time now versus why wasn't the time 10 years ago or 5 years ago, or do we wait another 5 years or 10 years to do this? Why is the time now? Right? That's always the question we ask ourselves. But if you look at the IRA legislation, like places where I come from, we're considered high risk. Like we can't get home loans there. We can't get personal loans. We can't do things that can economically help us through banks and stuff because we're considered high risk in Native communities, right, across the country. But now with the IRA legislation, places where I come from, for the first time, we're actually investable, which is really exciting, right? The IRA, if let's just throw an example out there, I wouldn't call it a tax credit. It's more of a direct pay program through the IRA. But the IRA really opens up and unlocks places like where I come from the opportunity to be investable through green energy. So one example, let's just say a tribe takes a $10 million loan. We can get 40 to 50% back within 45 days of a completion of a project. So we could get back $5 million within 40 days because of the IRA. Now this actually pencils out financially through bank loans, through any type of general loan where it actually makes sense, but it also allows tribes to take ownership of their projects even more faster. Where, I'm not trying to discredit any of the previous projects that's been happening in other tribal communities in the past, but there's been some large solar farms that's been put on tribal lands, but those tribes don't necessarily own it. They just get lease money off of it. They just get a small little percentage off the top. A lot of that money is being made by external partners or corporations or other people that are just using tribal land to make money. I want these projects to be owned 100% by tribal nations, right? That's the biggest thing that I want as we move forward. And there's nothing wrong with having investors and different things in your projects, but the IRA now really unleashes and unlocks the opportunity for Native people to take in advantage of it now and to actually allow us to become our own tribal utilities and take ownership of our projects even more faster. But again, make us even more investable as we move forward. So that's why the time is now. Economically, it really makes sense for Native tribes to pursue this journey and to start it now.
So as we talk about sort of energy sovereignty before we really move off that topic, I'm curious what role the technology of microgrids play. This idea of really having decentralized, resilient energy systems. Maybe it's rural tribes, away from traditional grid infrastructure. How do you envision that playing an assisting role in the work you're doing?
Yeah, I think the first thing is, microgrids, even community solar. It's all understanding and learning the landscape of your co-op, right? And like I said, working in some of the communities that I've worked in, they're really less resistant. So it's really us stepping in there and educating the co-ops and kind of pushing them to a level of what are they willing to change and willing to accept, and what are they not willing to do. But I think microgrids plays a key role, and I always like the approach of microgrids. There's a couple of tribal communities now that are pursuing microgrids to offset a lot of their facilities or infrastructure that they've created, because native communities are just remote, but they're all together, but they're remote. And there's a lot of land out there. And what's so exciting about microgrids, Garin, is a lot of the tribes that we're servicing, like out of the top 10 biggest landmass tribes in the country, we service 7 of them, right?
Wow.
In the whole country. So there's a lot of land with tribes that we have serviced already today, right? So we're excited to know that there's a lot of opportunity for these tribes and a lot of land to be able to be energy leaders within the region, even nationally. So we're excited about that. So we support microgrids 100%. Community solar, even with solar for all, community solar is allowed through solar for all. So we actually have a couple of tribes right now that community solar is friendly to it. So we're going to throw all this solar out in the field and connect it right into all the homes within their community there. So we're pretty excited about that approach. So it saves a lot more money to be able to do that. We can offset more homes than actually individually having to do it on each individual home. So we're pretty excited about some of the directions when you talk about microgrid and community solar as we move forward. But because a lot of these tribes do have land, it really makes it feasible for us to go down that road of creating a lot of microgrids for a lot of our infrastructure within tribal lands that we're excited about.
And does the solar for all sort of the sheer fiscal impact of a grant that size make the sort of economic concerns of microgrids a little bit more palatable for some of the communities? Because that can be a real turnoff for some communities.
Yeah, no, I think you're right. But whatever economically makes sense
Mm.
with the funding that we have, if we can stretch our dollars to put it out there as a microgrid and service more people, that's what we're going to do. Because really it's just about us creating what can we do with this money that's going to create the most impacts in these communities. So it's really up to us through Indigenized Energy to help them set a plan that makes sense for them, but really give them financial models that really set them up for success. And I think that's the most important thing that we do at Indigenized Energy too, is we want to make sure that every tribe understands the financial model of what's being put in front of them, because it's so important that we walk down that journey together to make sure they understand that. And we're there to make it a success. We're not just there to build projects. We want it to make sure that it pencils out at the end of the day, that the tribes are actually starting to generate a lot of savings within these communities with the best approach that we can provide to them with their current circumstances that they do have. So,
Absolutely. So broadening the scope of this conversation a tiny bit, we've been talking so diligently about energy sovereignty, but both energy sovereignty and food sovereignty, which you mentioned earlier, they emphasize this idea of local control, community empowerment, resilience. So from your perspectives, how can these movements work to sort of inspire and inform broader, really community level sovereignty efforts across the country? Do you see a sort of synergy between them where they can work together?
I think so. I think that's why tribes are in a very unique position, because we are our own sovereign nations. We control our own laws and our policies. There was one particular tribe in our area that actually, because of the easements of the co-op and all their electrical lines and poles and everything on tribal lands, there's been no easements that's been approved and negotiated for the last 50 years. So because they didn't renew them, the tribe had a unique opportunity to take over all their energy infrastructure within the tribe, their substations, their utility lines, everything. Now the tribe owns all that. Now it's just depending on what they're going to do to be able to implement a tribal utility there moving forward. So that just the tribes have a lot of power in energy if they really pursue it. When we talk about the word sovereignty, that's what tribes are. Tribes have their own sovereign lands. It's just depending on how far they want to push that sovereignty to the next level, right? So it's really important for us to really educate the tribes and what the possibilities are out there for them, but not just to do it in like a rogue or holistic way, but in a strategic way that makes sense. That's going to set them up for success. So I think that's really the most important thing when we talk about sovereignty, is we want to make sure that the tribes start to express that a little bit more and use it in their unique way. So when we start to develop that within our own tribal homelands, now we're starting to create more examples on what cities and what counties and what townships can start to do. And it really kind of has this big snowball effect to say, wow, why aren't we generating our own energy and where we come from? Why do we have to rely on outside resources to continue to do that, right? So really, it's just that approach. I know it's scary for co-ops. I know it's scary for other individuals, but really it's just the time to make sure that we're protecting ourselves for the future, because as we look at climate change, there's a lot of things that are happening around the world where people are losing power. There's a shortage on something, or just never knowing what the next big catastrophic weather event's going to be. Are we ready to actually be standalone and preserve and produce our own energy in our communities? Because it's just one of those opportunities now where I think we have to start looking out for our own communities to protect ourselves, not knowing what's coming ahead, but just knowing that things are getting, worse through the climate level, to making sure that we're preparing ourselves.
So what advice would you give to, policy members, funders, and green energy companies, other organizations looking to support Indigenous energy sovereignty, whether that's through specifically Indigenized energy or just the broader movement and concept?
I just think, in all reality, I think it's just really good to be open-minded. I know there's always creative ways that, we could still work with the co-ops where it could be generally beneficial to the co-ops and us as we move forward, the actual individuals creating their own energy. There's all kinds of unique opportunities to really find what that policy looks like, what that balance is for everybody that could work for everybody. But at the end of the day, it's just really about improving lives. It's improving lives. Native Americans in this country, we used to live till we're like 90, mid 90s, 96 years old on average. But our lifespan as Native American communities now has since went from like 96 years old to really like 56 years old. We've lost about 40 years of our lifespan over time. And that's because of the health effects that's been affecting our communities, where it's diabetes, or just not having adequate to clean air, clean drinking water, different things like that. But that all contributes to extraction around our communities. And believe it or not, it's all extraction majority of the time from energy projects that really have to affect our well-being and our lifespan within the Indigenous and Native people. So we want to kind of turn that clock back and go the other way now. Let's start bringing these great positive energy projects into our communities that helps expand our lifespan and start going the other direction. And I think that's really the big picture for me, and why this work is so important too, is because it's just not about money and jobs. That's great, right? But it's actually a health and well-being that's really much needed in these communities, and that healing that takes place for people that's been oppressed. But most importantly, just giving people hope and a brighter future, to know that what are we here today to do? We're here to look out for our next 7 generations that have yet to come. And what type of mark are we leaving to be able to do that, right? What type of seeds are we planting? And energy is a big role like that now moving forward. Like all the other things that we've been doing for so many generations, we should really be focused on energy, because energy is so important to all of us, as we move forward and then the continued generations to come.
Oh, shit.
So looking at the short horizon, what do you sort of view as next in terms of what the projects or goals that you're especially excited about, as you continue to build out indigenized energy with all these different community partners?
I think what I'm really excited about is just the dynamics of making sure that, like I said, we're doing things in the right way. What I mean by that is there's far too many parachuting type of projects that has come into Native communities and Indigenous communities all over the world. They had good hearts. They wanted to help us. They wanted to help Native people, but nobody really takes the time to build capacity, understanding what we're creating and what we're putting there, build the education and training around what you're doing, and making people understand what's being put there is really important too. And I think that's what I'm so excited about this work, is not only are we bringing energy sovereignty into tribal communities, but we're also bringing up in the people that really need it the most. We're empowering people that can utilize this power the most. But when you empower somebody, that just unlocks so much more capability in these communities to really really do more great things in the world. And I think in Native and Indigenous people, we have a really powerful message to share with the world. But because we've been kind of in this nutshell and been kind of oppressed over so many generations, we haven't been able to share that message publicly to the world yet. But I think with the work that we're doing here at Indigenized Energy, that really unlocks and unleashes that opportunity for us to really come out of our shell, heal, get more involved, be proud, provide hope, and really bring a light to this work that really is going to help us flourish to that next level as Indigenous people, to really come out of our shell and do more great things in the world that I'm really, really excited about. So
That's great. So we have about 10 minutes left in this conversation, which again, I cannot thank you enough. It has been so beyond fascinating and kind of your time. So I'll ask you one light question. You know, reflecting on this time that you've had, you said 8 years or so at this point in green energy. What lessons have sort of been the most profound or maybe unexpected is a better word?
I think seeing what energy does in communities like mine was inspiring. I never really knew what I was doing until I actually was on the ground and did it.
Mm.
You know, I just prayed about it. I knew it was a good thing. I knew that this was really needed, that we needed energy. But to see our Native communities kind of adapt and accept and you know, kind of meet the need to that was really exciting. Like just by talking to my elders about it, like the older ones before us, they're like, what do you think about this? Do you feel comfortable with bringing these types of things in our communities and putting them along with our traditional customs and our ways of life and our traditions? You know, and just seeing our communities react to this way of life, this energy way of life, this green transition has just been really exciting for me. Because like I said, I explained all those great things that it can do, but it just inspired me to want to continue to do more because of how excited our people are about this. But then again, just saying there's not enough of us out there that are providing the tools and the opportunity to these communities at a fast enough pace. You know, and being a Native-led organization, you know, that trust is a big thing in our Native communities. We just don't trust anyone or anybody, right? So being Native-led really helps us really get engaged even more at a higher level with these communities, but it allows us to really meet them where they're at, and making sure that they understand everything that's being done there is really important. But just being able to see people respond to it and how they reacted to it and how they want it even more so just excites me about this work as we move forward. And I think that's one thing I wasn't so confident in at the very beginning, but the more that I roll this out, it really makes more sense, and it just want me to continue to go out there and continue to do more for our Native communities as I, you know, proceed with this work.
So you've shared a lot of really great messages about the work you're doing, the work you're still hoping to do. But if you could maybe succinct that, you know, what is one message you'd love to sort of share with a broader audience about energy sovereignty? What is that message for you?
I would just say start to educate yourselves. Some tribes are at the very beginning. Some tribes are actually progressing along really well. Start asking those questions, start paying attention. Like when I was at the Dakota Access Pipeline, I was protesting up there with everybody else. I went home and I plugged in my cell phone, trying to upload pictures and video, and not knowing that when I plugged in my cell phone that I was actually contributing to the problem. The power that we were generating on Standing Rock is coal power from North Dakota. So as I was sitting there and understanding what I was doing up there, not really understanding that I was still contributing to the problem, that's really what propelled me to create that solar farm there, was because I wanted to do something about it. So really start to really educate yourself more at a local level first. Understand, well, how much am I paying compared to my neighbors or other cities? Who is my co-op? How much green energy are they deploying within my co-op? Am I using green energy, the energy that I use in my home? You know, so really just self-aware yourself with the surroundings around you first. And I think you'll start to understand more about how complex energy is. But at the same time, you know, once you start learning these things, you become a very valuable resource to a lot of people that need it the most, that can rely on you and trust on you. And that's one thing Indigenized Energy has done up to this point, is we become a really reliable resource to a lot of people that need it the most, that we can be trusted to know that we're actually looking out for the best interests of them versus talking about money or coming in and trying to make money off of people. You know, that's not what we're about. We want to make sure that we make you understand what the successes are and what you can do in your communities that can create a huge positive impact. But really, that's one thing that I would say is just make sure that you get more self-aware at a local level first before you start to really start to engage all these other big energy things that are happening around the world or the country.
Cody, I cannot thank you enough for taking the time to speak with me today about this amazing issue and the great work you are doing through Indigenized Energy. So thank you again so much. We have about 5 minutes left, and we've had a few questions from the audience. Would you be okay with taking a few?
Sure.
Sharon Stephen Teapiti, if you want to unmute, you can more than happy to ask your own question.
Okay. Kia ora, Cody. Thank you for sharing your discussion. And I just want to address you from where I sit here in New Zealand, where I've been doing some food sovereignty work primarily, but that's a little bit on hold right now. And our larger context is about coal mining and deep sea mining for lithium nodules and opening new mines in this region. And a lot of that is for export. And I'm just wondering how you see justice working with a just transition working, because I'm not an energy person and I'm really new to the conversation.
Yeah, I think to kind of elaborate on both, they're equally important. You know, food sovereignty is really important, and I think we've as Indigenous people, we've always understood the importance of knowing where our traditional foods are, where our homelands are, and everything like that. So it's almost like the same dynamic, right? Every co-op is going to be different. You have to understand your local dynamics on what's allowable, what's not, because obviously with food sovereignty, you can't just go and grow a food that's not going to be traditionally feasible in your area because of weather conditions or different things like that. So really, it's the same dynamic for energy sovereignty. You have to really understand your local policies, your do's and don'ts, and really understand your true complexity before you take those first initial steps around energy sovereignty. But yeah, I mean, I think both are just as important. Intertwining the methods and the strategies and how we do that is very similar and very interconnected, as I would say. So it's really important to do both, but at the same time, understand and realize that both are very much needed, like everything else, as we continue to move forward. So, you know, there's not just this; it's the same dynamic, same path forward on how we do things, just a different way of learning about how to implement it and do the work.
Thank you. All right. Is Nora Elmorzuki still with us?
Yes.
You dropped a question into the chat as well, if you'd like to ask that.
Yeah, I was just wondering in getting all of this started, if you are or have been working with any particular companies and or consultants that have really gotten you moving on this ownership and sovereign energy systems.
Yeah, I think so. Indigenized energy, we all understand that we can't do this work alone. I said that you're going to do that through the Solar for All process. That I want to inject as much of this money internally as I can into these communities. But the realistic reality is, we're going to need external partnerships. We're going to need external people to come and support and fill that void or that need, because we're talking about thousands of homes now that we're going to deploy this money at. So really, partnerships has really been a key for indigenized energy, but also partnering with the right relationships. Just some primary examples that what we've done in the past, where indigenized energy, when we bring in a contractor or bring in a partner or somebody externally that knows nothing about Native communities, it's our job at indigenized energy to provide a high level orientation to them, because we just don't want them coming into these communities that these communities just don't trust anybody, right? They don't trust anybody, and they're going to really rely on us to making sure that we're bringing in those right partnerships that don't cause any problems, or those good contractors that really believe in what we're doing and really want to support these communities in the right way. So it's our job in Indigenized Energy to really filter through them at a high level and give them all the information they need to be successful as we do work together and bring them onto these tribal communities, that they can also trust those external partnerships as well, because these external partnerships most likely won't be Native led. Right. So we do that at a high level here in Indigenized Energy and have a high success rate on working with external partnerships, external companies, anybody that does work in a renewable energy field, we always want to make sure that we set them up for success too. So we play a big part in that as we continue to deploy our work in Indian country moving forward.
All right, we have time for one last question. Ariana Lapke.
Yeah, hi. Thank you again, both of you, for having us and for sharing your knowledge. I was just curious, touching on some of the other questions, how tribes can kind of acknowledge or address the environmental and human injustice issues that come along with mining and batteries. So kind of just curious to hear your thoughts about that intersection of clean energy and degradation of, the environment and human working conditions in different countries as well. And also just curious about if Indigenized Energy does work with individual tribes. I work for the Soxwatl tribe as the climate change specialist, and I'm curious about having a microgrid feasibility assessment done to see if that could be something worth investing in. Thank you.
Yeah, let me answer that second question first, and then I'll get back to the environmental side. But yeah, so that's one thing we do here at Indigenized Energy. I think planning is the biggest thing because there's so much opportunity out there for funding, resources, and stuff that's available to tribes right now. And from what we've seen on the landscape is when you put in for any of this funding, you have to have a really holistic plan. So that's something we do at Indigenized Energy for tribes is we help them create that plan. We ain't going to come into a tribe and say, you got to do this, you got to do that. We want to hear what your tribe has to say and what they're like. What's your tribe's vision around renewable energy? What's your tribe's vision just around energy in general? And the better we can understand your landscape and what you want is the better how we're going to support you. Indigenized Energy will never come in and say, you got to do this, you got to do that. And we don't know anything about your homelands. You guys know your tribe the best, right? We're just there to support you any which way we can. But the planning process is really, really important as you continue to go down this road, because like I've said before, if we're coming on and bringing a bunch of projects into your community with no plan, it could be a problem, because then we might have to backtrack or change or cost more money to readjust those previous projects. So planning plays a big role to making sure that everything interconnects and works together as we continue to bring this holistic approach of making sure that we're just not planning for projects, but having more of a broader 30-year plan for your tribe that really makes sense to set them up for success. So planning plays a big role in that, and we can support your tribe in doing that, absolutely. The other part of just, technology in general, I think I shared with you that fossil fuels are just catastrophic, right? We know that, but we also know that there's still a little bit of mining that's involved with some of the technologies today within renewable energy. But one thing I can share with you again is that totally understanding that there's always going to be something that's not 100% perfect, but still knowing that we have to start that transition now, because if we don't and we wait, it may never happen. And the way the climate is working around us now, we have to find alternative ways to protect ourselves. And the way to do that really is clean energy, to making sure that we have a security within tribal homelands that need it the most. But the biggest thing that I would say is when we talk about batteries incorporated within, how would I say this, with renewable energy, this is really the biggest problem right here. This right here, like even more so than batteries used with solar. Everybody has these, and that, and that's really what's driving that mining up even more so. But as technology gets better, we also know that it's going to be less mining as that happens. And I've been really following the tech and what's being currently developed out there. And I will tell you that, we're going to need less and less of mining as we continue to move forward, which is a good thing. We're not where we need to be at today, but I know eventually here in the next several years, it's going to continue to improve. So, and we want to bring that good technology even more so into our tribal communities.
Well, Cody, again, thank you so much for taking so much of your time today to speak with us about Indigenized Energy and the work you're doing. Cannot thank you enough. If anyone wishes to follow with Cody, you can probably find him through the Indigenized Energy website. And yes, thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you for having me, Garin. And, super excited to continue to work with you, Rutgers University, and just making sure that we continue to learn more about what renewable energy looks like in places where I come from and some of the most difficult places in the country. Always willing to share that knowledge and what we're finding out and what we're doing about that as we move forward. So thanks.
Excellent. Thank you so much, and you have a great day. Thank you all for being here.